Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about a highly discussed debate between aspiring developers and even more experienced developers, and that's whether or not you should go to a coding bootcamp school. If you don't know who I am, my name is Alex Lee, and I am a software engineer based in New York City. I took a coding bootcamp school back in 2015, and since then I've worked on many different startups and worked on high-level projects. I've also mentored junior developers along the way. And the purpose of this channel is not to only teach you how to code, but also help you get to that next level, whether that be from an aspiring developer to a junior developer, a junior to mid, or mid to senior. With that being said, let's get back to the topic of why I think you should go to a coding bootcamp school. Full disclaimer, I realize that every person's situation is case by case, and there are going to be some circumstances that prevent you from going to a coding bootcamp school, but I wanted to list a few reasons why I would recommend the coding bootcamp school, and if that applies to you, then maybe it's time for you to take that next step. This topic really got my attention this year, and this year specifically, I've worked on many different side projects. I started this YouTube channel, and in the beginning, like all projects that you start off, it's super exciting to learn new things and just trying to keep that motivation going. But I also found myself getting a lack of motivation to keep continuing this project, especially when your subscriber count isn't growing or your app is not getting as much traction. You start to lose motivation. And I was wondering, what was the biggest difference between my 4 years before in coding bootcamp school and now? And I think it really revolves around this scarcity mindset. For me, if this YouTube channel doesn't do well, or if none of my apps do well, I still have a full-time job that I can kind of more or less rely on, that pays me well, treats me well, and I have a great work-life balance. And as great as those things are, I realize this also makes me very comfortable. I have no scarcity mindset. If I was to fail at these projects, then nothing really would come about from it. And I was thinking about back in 2015 when I did start my coding bootcamp journey. What I did was I quit my full-time job to commit fully to a coding bootcamp school. And the scarcity mindset, in a sense, was not only that you had to pay a lump sum about $12,000 to $15,000, but you also lose an opportunity cost of not making money for those 3 months. And it could potentially even be 4 months or 5 months or 6 months. So knowing about my own personal struggles financially of what can happen if I was to attend this bootcamp school, I committed 100% to this endeavor, and I treated my coding bootcamp school like a full-time job. And changing careers in general is not easy, but trying to do it on a part-time basis while you're working a full-time job is obviously not ideal. There's a difference between learning how to code just for the sake of it and trying to learn how to code to change your careers. Personally for me, I moved from California to New York to avoid the distractions and potential commitments that I might have if I was to stay there. As hard as it was, I did have to say no to a few weddings, some personal birthdays, and things like that, because to me, I was fully 100% on this coding bootcamp journey. And the biggest problem when you're kind of working full-time and trying to learn code on the side is, even though you want to make it a big priority, it's always going to be kind of second fiddle. You never know when your boss is going to ask you to work 10 to 12 hours, or your friend has a bachelor or bachelorette party, or distractions that are important, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, they are distractions. When I attended a coding bootcamp school, my only priority was learning how to code and trying to become a software engineer. Due to the scarcity mindset, I found myself attending the school from 9 to 5, but also working extended hours from like 7 to 12, and also working on weekends. I did not know anyone in New York City, and that was really a perfect situation for me because it really reduced the noise and distractions that I may have potentially had if I stayed at my home state. The second reason why I think you should go to a bootcamp school is the structure and pacing that a coding bootcamp can provide you. Personally, for my bootcamp school, they overwhelm you with the curriculum and really push you at a very, very fast pace. When you're working in a self-development or online route, you kind of go at your own pace, and you really, really want to iron out and make sure you know all the details before you move on. And as great as that is, you're never going to feel ready to really move on until you actually do it. Especially in software engineering, imposter syndrome is so real that you're really going to go at a snail's pace because you're going to lack the confidence to keep going forward. But what I found really beneficial with my bootcamp school was that even though I didn't feel like I was ready, they really push you to just keep moving forward, and eventually you'll get to that point when you do understand some of the things that you may have let slide before. On top of the structure and pacing, there really is a curriculum that you can follow when attending a bootcamp school. This doesn't really even apply to just a bootcamp school, it's just school in general. You know, they really teach you the concepts, you have midterms, and then you kind of have a final project. When you go through an online self-paced route, it's very difficult to really translate what you learned through passive learning into real life projects. So what coding bootcamps really force you to do is create your own projects, while certain Udemy classes, they may give you an opportunity to really follow along and copy their own projects. But what I found myself when I first started coding after a bootcamp school and using those online materials was that I couldn't really apply what I learned to real life projects. By having real life projects, it'll help you stand out when you're sending out your resumes versus some projects that you may have just more or less copied from the course curriculum. The third reason why I think you should go to a coding bootcamp school is community. I think that's pretty self-evident in the sense that you're going to be attending a bootcamp school with other people who are like-minded and motivated just as you are to change your careers. If you're going through a self-paced route, it's highly recommended that you find a mentor that's going to help you from the beginning to end to become a software engineer. However, realistically, it's going to be really, really hard to find someone that's going to be willing to sacrifice that much time for you, and you're going to have to probably more or less pay a pretty good amount of money to get that kind of guidance. So when you attend a coding bootcamp school, I couldn't help but notice that I got that feeling of misery loves company, and being able to suffer and just laugh with your classmates in becoming a software engineer. There was a bit of family feeling behind going through this journey together. Another reason why community is so important is that realistically, after graduating from a bootcamp school, you're very likely to join a smaller startup company, not really the Apples, the Netflixes, the Facebooks or Googles. And generally with young startup companies, they tend to kind of dissolve. And that is something that you can't really control within your power. You could be the greatest developer, but if your company runs out of funding, then layoffs are going to happen. With that being said, wouldn't it be great if you already had a community that you kind of started off with where people can vouch for you and your friends could actually probably get referral bonuses? So establishing that community very early on in your coding journey is super helpful. And I know that this is a video advocating for you to go to a coding bootcamp school, but if you can't, I would highly recommend attending local meetups, attending tech conferences, and whatever you can to really get your name out there. The last thing I want to talk about and why you should attend a coding bootcamp school is that bootcamps generally have connections to startups in the local community. The coding bootcamp I attended to already established 5 to 6 connections to various different companies within New York City for me to interview with. I didn't have to go on Glassdoor or LinkedIn or Simply Hired and just apply to as many jobs as I can as possible. Generally, if you're going through the self-paced route, you don't really have those connections unless you are very outgoing and just go to as many meetups as you can as possible. With the coding bootcamp school, and I want to put a disclaimer that you should really do your research and make sure the coding bootcamp schools you do attend aren't just teach you how to code and then you figure it out on your own. You want to attend a coding bootcamp school that really has a dedicated career service team who really want to cater to what you're interested in. But for me personally, when I attended the coding bootcamp school, the only thing I needed to worry about was just focusing on the code and getting ready for interviews. I didn't have to send my resume to other companies. If anything, companies were contacting me to get more information about me and see how interested I was in their company. So yeah, those are the 4 things I wanted to talk about on why you should go to a coding bootcamp school. There are obviously a lot more pro arguments on why you should attend a coding bootcamp school, but I really think if those 4 reasons apply to you, you should really consider applying to a coding bootcamp school. If you find yourself that you've been doing the self-paced route for about a year or 2 years and you're just not really making any progress, maybe it is a time for you to attend a coding bootcamp school to help you accelerate to that next level. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Smash those likes, push those likes. I don't really know what you're supposed to say, but if you like the video, then I would appreciate that. Otherwise, I'll see you later, and Tech Rally out.